What's cracking, y'all? You are now watching Boo TV. Appreciate you for stopping in. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, stay notified, and let's get into the topic for today. What up, what up, what up? Back with another analysis of another Fadeaway World post that was recently put out. So not too long ago, I had, I guess you can say, reacted to a video, or not to a video, to a post that they have put out on Instagram / I guess their web URL as well, where they've ranked all of the small forwards all time and picked the best small forward by category: scoring, playmaking, clutch, finishing, defense, versatility, etc., etc. And it was very LeBron James centric. So then I went through each one and gave the player that I thought should have been there, be it LeBron or somebody else. All right. Recently, they just, like I said, they put out another post this time ranking the centers, all the centers to ever play the game of basketball, and picking the best one by each category. And as suspected, before I really started, really dialing into the post, I just had a feeling that Nikola Jokic would probably have more spots than anybody, because it's a lot of recency bias. And not saying that he's not deserving of some of the spots, but I think we need to sit down and really look at it and think about history, not just the most recent thing shouting in your face, you know what I mean? So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go through this one and, talk about each one a little bit. And if I think that player deserves to be there, all right. If I don't, I'll give the player that I think, all right? So first, they have for scoring, Wilt Chamberlain. You have no argument from me. I would probably say Wilt Chamberlain as well. The only other player I would put ahead of Wilt Chamberlain, if I didn't go Wilt, would be Kareem. So it depends how you look at it. Wilt is only second to Jordan for points per game on a career, with over 30, slightly over 30. And you have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who is second on the all-time scoring list next to LeBron James, and was first for decades upon decades, up until LeBron James recently overtook him. So depending on how you look at it, but I'm looking at peak for peak. I'm looking at Wilt's average. Kareem's is definitely more longevity, but Wilt did so much scoring in his NBA career and only really dialed it down, some of it really by choice, buying into a team concept more, amidst a lot of the scrutiny, but he dealt with that his whole career. But he had a lot more scoring left in the tank, especially even when he went to the Lakers and played more of played a different role per se. But Wilt, yeah, you gotta go Wilt here in my opinion. His numbers were astronomical. His peak was astronomical. I don't know what else to say about that guy. And he's hard to evaluate because his numbers and records are just so ridiculous. I mean, the guy scored 100 points in a game. And then people look at this guy as he's nothing but myth because there's not a whole lot of video footage to support the details. But I don't see why any of this stuff would be fabricated. It's been a pretty consistent story with this guy, and there hasn't been any of his contemporaries to come out publicly and be like, that's not true, that's far-fetched. So I'm pretty sure this stuff happened. All right, I'm going Wilt, but honorable mention, I guess you can say honorable mention, but Kareem also has a case, but I'm going Wilt. All right, playmaking, they have Nikola Jokic, the Joker. All right, there have been other great playmaking centers in the history of our league. And then, there's another category, and it's called passing. And some people just have playmaking and passing as interchangeable. So I'm trying to give a different definition of playmaking. So passing is included in playmaking, but I'm also looking at it as your presence on the court. How does that create plays for other players, whether directly or indirectly? Keeping balls alive, and impact in general on making a play, not just always passing, but passing certainly has something to do with it. All right. So playmaking, You know, I'm o- I'm okay with saying Nikola Jokic. I'm okay with saying Joker. And considering he's been doing this, not at this level, but he's been doing it for quite some time. And there's a lot more left in the tank, but we'll see what happens. But other players that can be mentioned in playmaking is without a doubt Bill Walton, one of the greatest playmaking and passing big men we've ever seen. But unfortunately for Bill, his career was cut short. He's one of the biggest what ifs. I could also throw Wilt Chamberlain in there. That guy, just to prove that he could average or he could lead the league in assists, he did that. Now I know, if I'm not mistaken, I think he averaged 10 or over 10 and led the league in assists one year, if I'm not mistaken. Wilt could certainly play make, though passing wasn't always his initial forte, but he could do it. Um, and, rebounding, put back, scoring, Wilt could do a lot of playmaking. I mean, he was essentially the playmaker before he got to LA for the bulk of his career. Pau Gasol was an excellent playmaker. I don't think he was on the level of Wilt, Bill, or Joker, but was a great playmaker. I think Shaq was an underrated playmaker. I think Shaq was an underrated passer, despite what the numbers show. But his sheer dominance on the court and his size and the amount of attention and collapsing defenses, or well, Shaq forcing defenses to collapse so often once he got his position in the paint, created so many opportunities for shooters more than anything, spot up shooters. And I would also have to throw in there Hakeem Olajuwon was pretty versatile in that aspect. But I'm going Nikola. All right, rebounding, they have Bill Russell. Now, I don't have a problem with Bill Russell. I'm not going to sit here and argue with anybody. Bill Russell is certainly up there, and honestly, the only person that could really compare to him when you look at the numbers and what these guys were doing rebounding in their era was Wilt Chamberlain. It was like Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell. Yeah, take your pick, right? I'm personally going Wilt. Wilt had the higher rebound average slightly, and Wilt had a fairly significant amount of overall total rebounds, significant amount more throughout his career. And Wilt also has the most rebounds in the game, but Bill Russell has the most rebounds ever recorded in half with over 30. I think he had like 32. But I wouldn't have a problem if you wanted to go Bill, and I wouldn't have a problem if you wanted to go Wilt. But given the lack of video footage for both of these players, but the numbers speak for themselves, I'd have to give Wilt the edge on the rebounding. But what these guys were doing were just nuts, and there's no other players that can compare to the rebounding that these guys were doing at their time. But other honorable mentions and eras to follow where the rebounding wasn't as high, especially compared to those two. You got to mention Pettit. You got to mention, well, even George Mikan, but he was before them. Moses Malone, Willis Reed, Andre Drummond. A lot of people want to say that, but Andre Drummond was a beast on the boards. Nate Thurman and Dwight Howard too. Dwight Howard was a fantastic rebounder, and those are just some honorable mentions. And there's been other great centers that I can't really think of right now that grabbed a lot of boards, but those are just some that pop off the top of my head. So I'm going Wilt Chamberlain for rebounding. All right, 3-point shooting. Oh God, I knew what this one was going to be. Karl Anthony Towns. Y'all know I hate Karl Anthony Towns. I dislike him. I dislike his game. I dislike his attitude. He's so pompous and he thinks way too highly of himself. And when he announced himself the greatest 3-point shooter as a big man in NBA history, I'm like, get the hell out of my face with that. I don't want to hear that. And then I started doing research and I was like, well, I guess there's not really much people rivaling you, but at the same time, you think about bigs of the past, nobody was shooting. I knew bigs that could shoot the three, but bigs played their position more back then, and they didn't shoot a lot of threes because the 3 point shot wasn't weaponized as opposed to today, where you got centers that are just happy go lucky giddy, and the coach is encouraging them to shoot the three ball and stretch the floor. That really wasn't the case back then. It wasn't. It wasn't. But I mean, the percentages and the numbers run in Cat's favor because he's hoisting up so many of them. But like, if I had to pick, like, if I could take a center from a previous era and give him the amount of threes that we're giving Karl Anthony Towns, I would probably take some other centers. Like, for instance, I would take Rasheed Wallace. Put Rasheed Wallace in this era. I think Rasheed had a much better 3 point stroke than Cat. And I think Rasheed's 3 point percentage would be significantly better in today's era. He would shoot it more. He'd have more space. He'd have more time to shoot the three ball. Rasheed was a monster 3 point shooter. And I don't even think his averages are quite as good as Cat, but I think that's a testament to the era and, not being able to hoist up as many as these guys are doing now. Other bigs that can shoot the three ball in today's era: Brook Lopez, Joel Embiid, Joker. But the numbers sway in favor of Cat, and I don't really have a strong argument for anybody else. As much as I want to say put Rasheed in this era, I can't. And I can't say that he'd be like would be like convincingly that much greater as a 3 point shooter. So as much as I cannot stand Karl Anthony Towns, you can have that one. But as a big man, I don't think you should be really proud of that, buddy. Maybe I'm just a hater. All right, mid-range shooting. This is what I'm talking about, recency bias. They got Nikola Jokic as the best mid-range shooter at the center position all time. I have to disagree. I'm calling out recency bias on this. No. Joker can shoot the mid-range pretty well. Pretty good mid-range shooter, but there are definitely players I would take over him at the mid-range. You got some great mid-range shooters at the center position, man. And there's no way I could put Joker number one. Based on what I've seen, I'm running through some of the great centers that could shoot that mid-range ball. I'm going to have to go Hakeem Olajuwon, man. I have to. Hakeem could give it to you off the pick and pop, off the screen. Hakeem could give it to you in isolation, post mid-range, face up, dribble, stop, pull up, fade, left, right, back, no hesitation, double team, triple team, didn't matter. It didn't matter. I'm sorry. No. Nikola Jokic is not as good as a mid-range shooter as Hakeem Olajuwon. I can't go there. And some other players that I was thinking of that, have an argument, but I still wouldn't put them ahead of Hakeem. David Robinson, damn good mid-range shooter. And hell, I'd even take David Robinson over Joker. Patrick Ewing could shoot the mid-range ball. Joel Embiid can shoot the mid-range ball. Hell, you got people right now in today current NBA fans that'll say that Joel Embiid's a better mid-range shooter than Joker. At least they think. All right, Yao Ming could shoot the mid-range ball. Zydrunas Ilgauskas was a consistent mid-range shooter, though not so much in isolation, pick and pop kind of guy. Pau Gasol could shoot the mid-range in isolation and off ball, catch and shoot, as well as his brother Marc Gasol. Moses Malone could put the ball on the floor and catch, shoot in the mid-range very well. And get this, even Kareem, though this guy was shooting sky hooks in the mid-range area, that counts as mid-range, even though it's a sky hook. And another guy that people tend to forget, a very underrated basketball player that could shoot the mid-range very well, Rick Smits, bro. Rick Smits used to scare me, bro, because I know that man could shoot. Shout out to Rick Smits. But I'm going Hakeem in the mid-range. All right, passing, no surprise here. Just like they went with playmaking, they're going with Nikola Jokic. And for the same reasons, I'd have to give it up to Joker as the best passing center. I'd have to. The guy's a phenomenal passer. Even before Joker like blew up, when he was still like coming off the bench, and I was watching this guy play, I was like, dude, this. And I was seeing the passes this guy was making. I was like, dude, who is this guy? I was talking about Joker before anybody was calling him Joker. Phenomenal passer, man. Brilliant, brilliant. But like I said, Bill Walton is up there. Arvydas Sabonis was a great passer. Vlade Divac was a great passer. Wilt, Powell, Mark, all these guys could pass the basketball. But I agree, Nikola Jokic is probably the right choice. Defense. They got Hakeem Olajuwon. No argument from there. There's plenty of people that would consider Hakeem Olajuwon the greatest defensive player of all time, let alone greatest defensive center. And the only other player that I could accept in that role or in that position for best defensive center of all time, the only other player I could accept there would be Bill Russell, who was a phenomenal defender and honestly could guard more positions than Hakeem Olajuwon, with his ridiculous athleticism, quickness, long arms, anticipation, and so I would put up no argument for anybody that wanted Bill Russell in that position. And he could start fast breaks with his defense phenomenally. Hakeem Olajuwon was just an exceptional shot blocker. Exceptional. But then again, you look at Wilt Chamberlain, you look at Bill Russell, and um, they weren't counting blocks back then too. So that kind of sucks for them that they're kind of, left out of these discussions and arguments because there's a lack of information. But you can guarantee that Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain were pulling anywhere between 5 to 15 blocks any given night. But I have no problem with Hakeem, and I'll go Hakeem as well. Finishing, I always assume they mean finishing at the rim. They have Shaquille O'Neal. Um, yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay. I'm thinking other players that could finish well at the rim. Obviously, Wilt Chamberlain, one of the greatest finishers at the rim. Strong, extremely strong, versatile, quick, left, right, uh, dominant. Hakeem Olajuwon was exceptional finishing at the rim, especially with his footwork, get in position, finish strong, long arms, left or right hand, could use the glass well. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as well. But Shaq, I'll have to go. I'll go Shaq with finishing at the rim. I mean, once that guy got positioned down there was nothing you could do, especially prime Lakers Shaquille O'Neal. Like, that's just one of the most dominant forces you'll ever see inside the paint, finishing at the basket. I mean, 4 or 5 people hanging on his arms. I'm not even exaggerating. 3, 4, 5 players hanging on him, and he's just rising up with them like freaking. What's that game? The old game from the '90s with the little monkeys hanging like that, just grabbing them like, and then finishing, bro. Throwing people in the stands, dunking on them. The dude was a behemoth. And once he got deep, bro, there was nothing you could do with Shaquille O'Neal. And then the physical punishment that he was inflicting on players, play by play, was just ridiculous. So I have no problem with Shaq at finishing. All right, athleticism, they have Wilt Chamberlain. I'm going to have to agree there. Wilt Chamberlain could have been an Olympian, like straight up, as well as Bill Russell could have been an Olympian. Like, watching what Wilt Chamberlain could do, like the dude used to do track and field, man. High jump, I believe. Like, watching this guy on a fast break, I might not have he's one of the fastest players I've ever seen get from one end of the court to the other end of the court, and he could do a dribble in the basketball, jump out the gym. And the dude was just a freakish athlete, man. I'm telling you, low body fat percentage too. The same can be said about Bill Russell, but I think Wilt has the edge over him. And Shaq was a freakish athlete as a center too. Like people forget like how for all of Shaq's size and weight, that guy could run the floor and get high in the air, and really never suffered from like that what Yao Ming suffered from, was just always being fatigued and being gassed. Like Shaq didn't really have that problem so much. The only time he really dealt with that is when he would come in to camp out of shape. But the minute he got back in shape, it was the dude could go all game, man. Shaq was an athlete. It's just so weird seeing somebody at his size get up the court like he does and get as high as he does. But still, Wilt Chamberlain for athleticism. All right, clutch. They have Bill Russell. I think this is one of those things where I as much as I've read up on Bill Russell and watched videos on Bill Russell, it's just one of those things where I don't know. Like I guess if you look at it from all the championships he has on those great Boston Celtics teams, you have to imagine that I guess if you want to define clutch as the ability to continue to stay on top and win championships, sure, I'm sure there's something to be said about that. But and I'm sure Bill Russell has made plenty of clutch defensive plays in his position and at his position. But when it can't comes to getting a bucket, you know, how good was he in the clutch then? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't think there's any stats for that I've seen. I haven't really seen any video footage, so I don't know. It's hard for me to really evaluate this one. But I so I say it sucks with these Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain arguments because I don't know what I don't know, and I don't know how Fadeaway World is coming to their conclusion. There's no reasoning that they give behind these choices, but you know I definitely give them the benefit of the doubt. Like clutch as hell on the defensive end of the floor because I know that much about him, but I know he wasn't the best offensively at his position for sure. But you know, I might have to go Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the most clutch center of all time because Kareem wasn't as good as Bill Russell on defense, but he was a very solid defender. And I've seen Kareem Abdul-Jabbar make clutch plays on a defensive end at times with video footage, but I've also seen Kareem work magic on the offensive end in the clutch. And I don't think anybody would disagree with me that Kareem is just a superior player offensively. And you could get him the ball down low or in the mid range and deliver you clutch and timely buckets. I've seen Wilt do that. So I'm going to go Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the clutch. And it may be by default, I don't even want to say that, but just what he can do offensively and defensively. I know what Bill can do defensively, but I just don't have the information for what he did offensively in the clutch. But I just know that he wasn't the best offensive player in the world, so I can't imagine it was anything wild. That's just me trying to be unbiased, and there's no bias in this, but just trying to give as much context and be reasonable about it. That's a tough one. All right, efficiency. They have Nikola Jokic. Hmm. This is a tough one, man. Hmm. All right, other players I'm thinking of, for example, is Shaq. Inside the paint, but that's where Shaq did all his operation. He really didn't leave that low post so much. He had a nice baby hook sometimes just outside the paint that he could rely on. Wasn't bad. And for his career, I think Shaq's like, pretty sure he's like, what, 53, 54, 55%, something like that. But I'm sure most of these centers probably hover around somewhere between 50 and 57%. Um, uh, Shaq was efficient. David Robinson was efficient. Wilt Chamberlain was efficient. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was efficient. Like all these guys were efficient. And it's like you look at a center position, right? And it's like, well, the centers thrive in the paint, right? So Shaq, obviously, you look at Joker. They pick Joker, right? But you can even take David Robinson, for example, and Joker, for example. They were efficient inside the paint, but they were efficient outside the paint as well. Like they could shoot the mid-range jumper. Shaq had no jump shot. But should we fault him for that because he was a big guy just playing his position and knew his strengths and weaknesses? Like he was never going to be a good shooter. So he stuck to what he knew and he was dominant at it. Nobody could stop him. So why should he not go to where his bread and butter was if nobody could stop him there? It's one of those situations. Um, but and then the other thing is with Nikola Jokic is that you look at Shaq, you look at David Robinson, you look at Wilt, look at Kareem. These guys were playing against other legendary Hall of Fame centers at their position, defensive centers as well, on a night in, night out basis. So they were dealing with much more size and much more of a defensive opposition on the other end where Nikola Jokic really doesn't get that. It's a lot of small ball in the league. Many games, Joker's by way and a far, or I said that wrong, by far and away the largest player on the floor, and you only really see him go against good opposition on the opposite end. Um, with like you're pretty much just waiting for him and Joel Embiid to go up against each other each season because there's really, what you want to say, DeAndre Ayton supposed to be a good defensive player, but no slide against him. Joker did eat that fool up, but so it's hard to say. But even when he's played against Embiid, I felt like Joker was still more or less himself. Now Embiid is by far no Kareem, no Hakeem, no David Robinson. So it's one of those things where it's just so hard. And then you even look at efficiency, where we're looking at PER, player efficiency ranking. Like Joker has one of the best PERs of all time. But then again, like I said, that takes other things into that equation. So I don't know. That one's tough. Um, I I'll give it to Joker. But I really wonder how efficient Joker would be if he was going against a night in, night out basis. Hakeem, a David Robinson, a Patrick Ewing, a Shaq, Tim Duncan, or whatever the case may be, a Moses Malone, a Willis Reed. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, but it's hard to quantify. But I'm okay with Joker, but I wouldn't have a problem if somebody looked at it from the other perspective, like, dude, it's Will, it's Shaq, come on. And they played in the paint, they played their position. I don't know. They played harder opposition at their position. I get it. So I would be okay if you went the other direction with it. Leadership, they went Bill Russell. You know what? I'll have to agree, man. And when you look at all the championships Bill Russell won, and yeah, you look at the teams in the era and there weren't as many teams. I get all that, but the guy was a fantastic leader, and everybody that's ever played with him would always share the same sentiment. This guy was just a phenomenal leader, and he didn't have to score a bunch of points to be, some people lead by example, but I think Bill really knew how to galvanize his teammates and bring the best out of them without being like an elite playmaker or whatever. He did but he did a lot of his magic on the defensive end, and that helped. That gave other players the what's the word I want to use, the motivation to play on the defensive end as well, and then knowing all the things he could create offensively for them just by how elite his defense was, and just being a role model, being a positive force, uh, building that bond with his teammates, and knowing how to get the gears spinning and get the best out of his team. Like that's all I've ever heard about Bill Russell, and I guess the results speak for themselves, right? So I have no problem with Bill Russell. I also think Kareem was a great leader. Hakeem was a great leader. I think David Robinson was a great leader. And Shaq by example. um, but you know what? I'm taking up. Never mind. Shaq didn't always lead by example. Coming in, that's one thing that pissed Kobe off about him was like, dude, you're supposed to be a leader of this team, and you're coming in out of shape, and you don't want to get well. You only want to get well on company time because you got injured on company time, and you want to eat cheeseburgers and come start the season out of shape. What kind of leader are you? I'm taking Shaq off that list. Sorry, I should never said that. Slap myself. Shaq was a leader, but not among the greats. All right. Versatility. They got Bill Russell. I'm going to have to go Wilt Chamberlain. I understand all the things that Bill Russell could do defensively and marginally offensively to some degree. But Wilt Chamberlain gave you the best of both. He wasn't as good as Bill Russell defensively, but he wasn't too far off, and he was far greater than Bill Russell offensively. So he could get your rebounding, he could get your blocks, he could get your fast breaks, he could get your score. He was just much more versatile. Wilt Chamberlain was. I have to say that as a big. And Joker is extremely versatile as well, but Joker pales in comparison defensively to Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell and Kareem, who's also a versatile player. But I have to go Wilt Chamberlain on this one. His offensive output is too high, and his defensive output is high as well, though not as good as Russell. But you get more balance on the versatility scale with Wilt Chamberlain, in my personal opinion. I'm going Wilt. All right. Ball handling, they got Joker. Again, I think this is one that's recency bias. I can't go there. No. I look at other great centers that I've seen handle the basketball. Shaq actually played point guard in high school, and even when he would Shaq, for the most part, stayed within his role when he got to the NBA. He knew, like I say, he was bread and butter in the post. He didn't try to do too much, and the league was a post league back then. It was a big men's league back then, so he did what he had to do, and how the era defined players back then. But I've seen Shaq run the fast break as an NBA player on the Orlando Magic, as a Laker. I've seen what he can do when he had to face up dribble or even back down dribble, post moves, ball handling. He was solid. Joel Embiid, I would argue, has better handles than Nikola Jokic. And they're playing together in the same era. Boogie Cousins, I think, had better ball handling than Nikola Jokic. Pau Gasol has an argument for being a better ball handler than Nikola Jokic. Hakeem Olajuwon, I think, was a better ball handler than Nikola Jokic. Did I say Wilt Chamberlain? I think I did. But ultimately, from what I've seen from bigs that can handle the basketball, I might have to go David Robinson, bro. Dude, David Robinson had some point guard skills that shouldn't. I'm gonna have to do a video on David. I haven't done David Robinson. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do a video on the Admiral. Man, Robinson could run the fast break. Robinson could face up, hit you with a crossover, right, left, stop on a dime, blow past you, long steps, finish behind the back. Like David Robinson could handle the basketball. He very well might have the best ball handling for a center that I've seen. And doing it at an elite level and at a championship level, more or less. Come on, man. I'm going to have to go David Robinson. Sorry, Joker. Sorry. Listen, I gave you playmaking and passing and efficiency. I gave you that. But, yeah. And even the efficiency thing was a toss-up. And the best, they have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And this is one that many people will debate, depending on how you're looking at it. Because, like, when I was breaking down all of these categories, I wasn't taking championships into consideration. I wasn't. But, if you look at, when you take accolades and championships into consideration, couple that with individual talent, mix everything together in a bag, I would come up with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as well as the best. And you're like, hell, he didn't even hit any of the top spots in any of his categories. Well, that's not the point. You can hit a few top spots, but be pretty absent in the rest of the spots. But Kareem was one of those guys that were honorable mentions in each category. You know what I mean? So if you were consistently like second or third across the board, as opposed to somebody that has, number one or two, or number one and two or three boards were fairly absent in other areas, then this guy is the better player. He's more consistent across the board. May not be the best at everything or the most things, but he's consistently one of the best across the board. I wouldn't have a problem if somebody wanted to say Wilt Chamberlain. I wouldn't have a problem if somebody wanted to say Bill Russell. I wouldn't have a problem if somebody wanted to say Hakeem or Moses Malone or Shaq. To be honest with you, I think defining the greatest center of all time is one of the hardest categories. But even if I were to not consider championships, it would still be hard for me to pick who the greatest is. But it would be hard. I might sway. I'd probably still be just juggling between Kareem and Wilt Chamberlain if I wasn't considering championships. But it's tough. But I have no problem with Kareem, and I'm good with Kareem. That's my breakdown of Fadeaway Worlds list, and those are my inputs. Let me see how many I change. So rebounding, I went Wilt Chamberlain. They had Bill Russell. And mid range, they had Joker. I had Hakeem. What else? Clutch, they had Bill Russell. I had Kareem. Versatility, they had Bill Russell. I had Wilt. Ball handling, they had Joker. I had David Robinson. So this wasn't overall, it wasn't a horrible list. I think there was a little bit of recency bias with Nikola Jokic, but overall, not a horrible list. And I don't have a big problem with the parts I disagreed with. So, not bad, not bad, not bad. Not all of my picks per se, but not bad. Y'all let me know what you think about it. Who would you have picked in each of these categories and why? Sound off. Let me know your opinion. I would love to hear it. All right. Appreciate you guys. I had fun with this. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell. You can go check out our other video that I did similar to this with the small forwards. I'll put a link to that video in this one. Actually, I think I might just make a fadeaway world. If fadeaway world's gonna keep doing this, I might just make a fadeaway world, analysis or reaction video playlist that you guys can access. All right. Appreciate you guys. Stay blessed, and I'll catch you on the next one. We out, baby.